Hello and welcome to Bringing Education Home. I'm Herb.
And I'm Kristina. Together, we are bringing you ideas about education, entrepreneurship, relationships that are both inside
and outside the box. If you like the show, be sure to follow Kristina on Facebook
and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.
Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Ravi Rajanathan. I didn't quite get that right. Isn't it Ravi? Dr. Ravi is an executive and leadership development coach and author who coaches and leads workshops to help people tap into their inner strength, overcome root causes of stress and constraints, equip them with tools for enhanced mental fitness, and achieve a transformational shift towards sustained peak performance, overall well-being, and a success in their professional and personal lives. Dr. Ravi is also actively involved in community service focused on helping the homeless, mentoring transitioning Special Force veterans into their second career, and supporting youth education and well-being in rural, local areas and internationally. He recently published a book, Hardwiring versus Rewiring, Shaping the Mindset, Skill Set, and Behaviors During Early Childhood Development, which is aimed at helping understand the importance of proper cognitive wiring in early childhood and a precursor resource to all those that are currently in their cognitive rewiring process to overcome their limitations. Boy, that's a lot, Dr. Ravi. Would you like to bring that home and make that a little more specific for our viewers today?
Welcome. Sure. Thank you, first of all, for having me today. It's an honor. And I'm originally from Malaysia. I came to this country back in 1985 to go to school and work myself. I did not have any money coming into this United States here with just 1 year's tuition. I have no idea how I was going to pay for my college, but I did. But essentially, like you said, I am an executive coach and a leadership development training workshop facilitator. And for the last 10 years, I've been working as a strategic advisor and an executive coach for organizations, large organizations with their digital transformation efforts, and also helping them to achieve peak performance. And as I was working with a lot of different individuals and to find out what was actually blocking their achievement, it always led back to their early childhood, whether it was a broken family or lack of a role model or whatever, right? So that kind of prompted me to write the book about hardwiring versus rewiring and the importance about how do we make sure that we understand how we are cognitively wired before we start the rewiring process. Because right now, if you were to go type in a Google search, I urge your audience to do this live while we're watching this, right? Type in a Google search, healing your inner child, and you'll see at least 50 to 60 million search results.
Oh, yeah.
So the first question that should come up to your mind is like, why are we healing our inner child when it should have been filled with joy and laughter and adventure and creativity and all that, right? And then the other thing that compelled me to write the book was when I came across this United Nations statistics that said that 250 million children under the age of 5 are developmentally delayed globally. 250 million.
Way too many.
These are pre-COVID numbers.
Yeah.
Right. And guess what? They're going to be burdened to society later on.
Yep.
Right. And especially when 0 to 5 is when your neuroplasticity is the highest. That's when the brain grows the largest, 90% to adult size by the time it's age 5. And they're born with like 86 billion neurons and just waiting to be hooked up. You know, that's called synapses.
Yes.
So what I did was writing in this book is providing an instruction manual for parents, early childcare providers, and even teachers. How do you nurture the mindset, skill set, and behaviors during early childhood? Because we all grew up doing parenting as to best of our knowledge based on how we were raised, right? Mm-hmm. But nobody actually gave them an instruction manual. So this was essentially with an instruction manual. And I also bring that into my coaching practice as well, because that is the cognitive science part of it in terms of understanding how you are cognitively wired. Because if I were to just give you a framework or a methodology to overcome conflict management or accountability or relationship and trust and things like that, you might not actually tapping the root cause, right? Because a true leader appears when it's stress, right? Yeah. So if I did not touch you, if I did not uncover what your root cause inhibitors are, guess what? You're going to revert back to that when you times of stress.
Yeah.
So that's why I understand the cognitive wiring is important. And then after that, I get into the neuroscience part of it in terms of, okay, now that we know that, how can we build new neural pathways, right? So this becomes part of the new neural pathways too, with new habits, and then give you different strategies and how you can make sure it's sustainable by habit formation. Because typically I've heard so many different variations. It takes 21 days to do the same thing before it becomes habit and things like that. And why is that important? Because 95% of what we do is controlled by our subconscious mind. That's where our belief system, our biases, and all that are. And guess when that was formed? During 0 to 5.
Yeah. Yeah. That
So,
is so amazing, because people do say a lot, oh, children don't come with a handbook. How do we know even what to do with them? And so it's really important that parents take it upon themselves to find books like this that will help them, or to go to some parenting classes, or getting help through family knowledge, whatever it is, to help make them the best parents that they can be.
I agree. Because if you look at how families have evolved as well, the nucleus family has changed, right?
Yeah.
Because when we were growing up, grandparents were there or whatever. Now it might be a single parent, or both parents are working. It's daycare. We have no idea what's going on, right? So in all fairness to them, they're all busy, right? That's why I'll make sure in this book as well, I've given them bite-sized strategy,
Yes.
right? And how can you implement it in your day-to-day interaction with your child? Simple things like speaking out loud, it's more of the quality versus the quantity, right? And making sure that they are mimicking everything, because they're just, like I said, they're waiting to be hooked up.
They're
They're
little sponges.
observing everything. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes they repeat something. It's like, where did you hear that? Oh, well, from mom and dad.
Right, exactly. Sometimes it's those things you don't want them repeating that they hear in the car when there's bad traffic, right?
Exactly.
Let's not do that one. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
mean, even teachers, we've gone through our child psychology classes and things like that. So we get a little bit of a leg up on that, but there's still so much new research about the brain and things like that has come to light in just the last few years. And in your book, you have a section where you kind of talk about the different stages of the brain development. Can you go over those real quick so parents can get a better understanding? Just give us some highlights so they
Sure.
understand better why this age is so important.
Exactly. So, yes, there is a diagram in the book, and before we get there, it's important to understand what are the early childhood development skills, right? For you to ask the parents what they are, you have different answers. So, besides the motor skills, it is cognitive skills, language and communication, and social and emotional. And different parts of the brain, whether it's the prefrontal cortex, or whether it's the limbic system, or different parts of the brain grow at different stages from 0 to 5. So how do you accentuate the different things when you're doing with that, you're interacting with them, whether it's the language and communication, or what, this is the prime period between 2 and 5. So I kind of map that out between 2 and 5, or 0 and 1, and 3 and 5. These are the highlights. So kind of amp up some of the things that you're doing in terms of cognitive abilities, or language and communication, or social and emotional.
Right.
And the beauty about this whole thing is you don't need any expensive toys or gadgets or fancy books. All the best toy a child could have is your parent.
Yeah.
Right?
And
I also,
right.
Say that again. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the best toy. But guess what? We don't behave the right way. We don't have the time for that. Even when we're home, we're looking at a cell phone and talking to the child. Right? Are you looking in the eyes and things like that? Guess what the child will do? Mimic the same thing. Right? So I also go in my book, I talk about the 4 C's. Gently is like, critical thinking, compassion, conscientiousness, and things like that. I said, what are those? And how could you model that towards your child?
Right.
Herb, I heard a comment down there. What were you going to say?
Curiosity was your 4th C.
Yes, curiosity. Because to me, I think curiosity is where you actually have the impetus for innovation. That's so important, right? And again, when I talk about cognitive, right, it's basically the core skills that are involved in your brain to explore, learn, think, and figure out how to solve problems. You know, that'll include things like attention, short-term memory, long-term memory, logic and reasoning, auditory processing, visual processing, and things like that. And then language and communication is just basically the type of language you use and how you communicate with others. And then finally, the social and emotional is both the intrapersonal and interpersonal skills. This includes a child's experience, expression, management of emotions, and the ability to establish positive and rewarding relationship with others. So again, I dissect this in the book, exactly what this means and how it's important for you to reinforce and mimic this so you can have that as part of their DNA and part of their subconscious. And this is an interesting part that just blew me away when I was doing the cognitive research. These childhood development skills are also directly linked to our 21st century skills. Because currently we live in the digital industrial age, Industry 4.0, and they talk about 3 critical skills, and they are cognitive, intrapersonal skills, and interpersonal skills. It's like, I got goosebumps when I was reading through that. It's like, wow, okay. That's why it kind of makes sense together. Understand how you were cognitively wired. Now you know why you messed up the way you were, right? Okay, now that you know that, okay, great. There's hope. It doesn't mean that if you miss the boat between 0 to 5, you're out of luck. You can still do it, but that's where the habit formation comes in, the neural pathways, new neural pathway forming comes in. So as you can tell, I get excited about it. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as a teacher, when we talk about reading, we talk about the same thing, that reading actually begins when they're toddlers. So by them climbing on the monkey bars, by them picking up rocks and exploring, by their eyes tracking back and forth, all of those things are the pre-reading, getting their body ready and their mind ready for when they are introduced to the print and to the words and how to follow along on the text or make inferences from the pages, because they've been doing that from all over the world around them.
Okay, amazing, amazing. Yeah. And Herb, you mentioned about curiosity and the 4 C's. You know, what made me what I am is because I was a curious child from the get-go. Ever since I was young, you know, I got into all kinds of trouble. I wanted to discover, because I was told to not take things for granted. You know, I question why it is. But what happens when the child asks, "Why, mommy? Why, daddy?" Because I said so. No, that's the wrong answer. You want to sit down and, you know, tell them why it is the way it is. And if you don't know the answer, it's okay. That's another teaching moment. It's like, let's figure it out together. Mom and dad don't know this, you know? So that's the whole thing about learning and unlearning as well.
One of the things that I kind of heard quite a bit as I got a little older was you look with your eyes, not with your hands. And actually in that 0 to 5 age, it's like children do look with their hands. They do need to touch things. They do need to play with things. So if you always are taking stuff away from your kids and, oh, just put them in front of the television, then they are missing so much of their learning opportunities by not being able to touch and hold and grasp things. Because even as young children, that is so important for how they learn to be able to curiously touch and feel and think and look at and move objects around in space. That's so critical to even later development in life.
You're absolutely right. You know, the concept of pruning applies as well, because if you don't use it, guess what? You're going to lose it, right?
Exactly.
So it's important that you culture that and motivate, you know, harness that, because when you really look at curiosity, it's basically having a strong desire to learn and know something. And like I said earlier, it's actually a catalyst for innovation, since it will spark the, you know, intrinsic motivation to learn, experience, and understand the environment of the world.
In teacher speak, it's called love of learning. If you have that curiosity, if you have that love of learning, you learn just for learning's sake. You learn because you're interested in something, not because someone's like pushing facts and figures at you.
Yeah, and you brought up another point, which is important. The word love, right? One of the 4 C's is compassion.
Yes.
Right. And I look at it as it's a sympathetic conscientiousness of others' distress together with a desire to alleviate. Right. And in order to do that, it'll require a sound cognitive skill to bring awareness needed to, in terms of recognize there is suffering or unease, and then actually having the cognitive ability to bring awareness and the ability to make you feel emotionally moved by the plight of others. Not only trying to just understand, but also, you know, attempt to take action to relieve that suffering.
Right.
And how cool would that be? If every child grew up with that. And the human body is basically like two forms, right? We are wired to be fight or flight or
Mhm.
growth, right? You got the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, right? And fight and flight is how we're wired. That's how our ancestors survived, because, oh my God, I got to run away from the tiger or the dinosaur or whatever, right? But a continuous focus on that stage prolongs, that state, could give you stress. So it's important that, because at the same time, when you're in fight or flight, you're shutting down the creativity.
Right.
So if the child is in stress, guess what? You're shutting down the growth. So that's why compassion is so important. Hugging them, holding them, showing them that you're safe, right?
Yeah.
And then now they can grow. The creativity part will come in, right? So that's so important. And a lot of people like, no, let him cry, or whatever. Like, I don't want to get my soapbox in that, but
Well, I mean, there's definitely times to let them struggle, because that's also a learning time, but it's not struggle to the extreme. It's struggle to the point of, oh, I can figure out something, or, oh, I can work my way through this, but not to, the distress point.
you are absolutely right. And I always say, common sense still applies. Right?
Let's see. Sometimes we wonder, sometimes though, is common sense still out there? It's like, let's think about this, right?
Common sense doesn't seem so common anymore.
Exactly.
But that's why
So
these discussions are very important, to help show people and help people learn and listen. Oh, wait, I didn't think about it like that. Maybe I need to think about this point and also.
yeah,
Yeah, and sometimes as the parents get older and they get stressed and they're in their own place, to be able to sit and have the energy to hold that child and to allow that. It seems a lot of times right now that it's easier just to say, oh, put them in front of a television, oh, let's do this, and just kind of leave them alone on their own. And so where the parent is the best toy, then a lot of times the stress of the parent is taking the best options away from the children.
you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And there's tons of research done as well, empirical research, where, the biggest one is the one in Romania, where the child were abandoned. I forgot the name of the gentleman. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you saw this, what happened to their development, was totally demolished, right?
Right.
So it's important that you have that. And if you can provide that, make sure you have somebody who's there to provide that, because it's your responsibility. You brought this child into this world.
Exactly. Exactly. One of the things that I just spoke about recently was how to help your child through a traumatic experience or trauma with the family. And what Herb was just saying about the parent being so stressed that they, kind of leave the child off on their own devices. But then what I was talking about was that if you do that, the child's mind goes to the fact of, oh, what did I do wrong that mom and dad are so upset? Or what did I do wrong that I can't, get their attention anymore? So one of the things I mentioned during that talk was to make sure that you talk to your children and explain to them, I'm going through something traumatic right now. I don't want you to feel like you're the cause of it, or you have to do something different to get my attention, to let them know. So it goes back to that, the compassion you were talking about is really sharing as much as you can with your children in an age appropriate way, that they understand that it's not them, it's you dealing with something, and that hopefully you can get yourself under control and come back around and be with them in a loving relationship, close and developing again.
Yeah, 2 points to piggyback on that.
Uh-huh.
One of the things that when I work with all my leaders, is one of the true leadership skills is to be vulnerable. You don't know all the answers, right? The wisdom is in the collective, right? So if you mess up, make sure you own up and things like that, right? So again, same principles apply to the parent, right? Be vulnerable with your child. Show them what vulnerability is, right? Get them comfortable with that, right? And then see how you overcome that, right? And because most of the time, what the parents will do, like they'll say, oh, like say they did get a C in your paper or whatever. They say, you got to try harder. How am I going to try harder if you haven't showed me how to try harder, what to do to get there, right? So, but that's the easy way out, try harder. So that's one. The other thing is the emotion. right? Rather than suppressing the emotion, if they're angry or mad or whatever, don't suppress it. Like, don't be mad, don't cry, and things like that. It's like, no, it's okay to cry. Tell me why you're crying. You know, everybody goes through this emotion. What's
Right.
going on? Let's figure it out. Oh, did Tommy hit you? Why did he hit you? Because you grabbed his toy. Okay. How would you feel if you would have done it? Yeah, just reason with them. It's okay to get mad, but again, all this whole thing about the empathy and things like that. So vulnerability is number one thing that I talk about to my leaders. And the other one is empathy, you know, empathizing with your employees, right?
Mhm.
And that's also missing. And it really came to head during COVID when they're working from home, right? It's like, I don't know whether they're productive working from home and things like that. Well, that's on you, right? You need to make sure you give them a task that, you know, they can complete, whether it's take them 8 hours or 4 hours, it's on you to make sure you get the right task and things like that. So there's a lot of connectivity between what happens during childhood to
Mhm.
what happens when you're an adult. And there's
Absolutely.
so many research as well. Even when you're suppressing emotion, you see a lot of criminals. It's because of that childhood trauma, what they went through there. You know. So yeah, I can go on and on.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the whole like clean your room. And then you come in and it's like, well, your room's not clean. Clean your room. And it's like, how do you clean your room? Teach them how to clean the room. It's like this, you pick this up, you put this here, is there's, and so you find the spaces. So it's not just, hey, go do this. It's being with, especially with the young kids at that age, it's giving them the steps. And if you do that, then as they get older, then they can start to learn the steps themselves. So when they do get a challenge, it's like, okay, well, now I know that there's steps and what are the steps I have to get to reach this goal that I have.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And there's also, you know, we talked earlier about technology and things like that, like tons of great technology.
Mhm.
But rather than being a slave to that technology, what you want to teach them is how do you use that technology to even empower yourself and even further yourself much further, you know, in advance in
Yes.
every different area. A good example is Chat GPT. You know, a lot
The
a
big
lot of
buzz right now.
a lot of people saying, "Oh no, you know, the paper." You know, a lot of professors were freaking out. It's like, "Oh my God, now the students are going to cheat and things like that." I was like, "No, maybe you should give them something more difficult, where they can enhance their writing skills or critical thinking skills by
Mhm.
using Chat GPT, right?"
Right.
So again, how do you utilize this technology to advance yourself rather than using them as a babysitter or a substitute to parenting?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we have to find that balance in that technology because it can definitely be helpful. And then there's times where it should just go away so we can do other things together, like take a walk
Exactly.
outside.
Exactly, exactly. And that's why I was passionate about this book. It's like it was basically a gift to society. It's like, hey, I did the research for you. You know, this is not something I came up with. What I did was I got all the different research on the neuroscience and the cognitive science and the early childhood development skills and things like that, put it all together in
Uh-huh.
bite-sized format, just implement it. It's not going to cost you a penny besides buying the book. You know, it's not going to cost you that much. Everything is in there, and the return on investment is going to be like 1,000-fold because
Mhm.
of your child. You know,
Yes.
so that's my hope. Wanted to get the message out to as many people as I could, and I'm so happy that you guys got me here. So hopefully your audience gets some benefit, and they're more than welcome to reach out to me as well.
Absolutely. Yes. And, having those actionable steps is so important because, like you said, in our busy, crazy world, if you give them a whole big list to do, that won't happen. But having small, bite sized chunks is the way to go. And that's the way to go with our children. Our children need to have those little steps that they can accomplish and feel good about, and then move on to the next step and the next step and help build that growth and emotion and confidence.
Exactly. And I also give the parents and the childcare providers too a tool as well.
Mhm.
It's pretty common. It's called start, stop, continue, right?
Okay.
As you're going through this nurturing process, what are some of the things that you want to do in terms of your behaviors and actions that you're not doing that you should start doing,
Uh-huh.
right? That's the start. And
Right.
then what are some of the things or actions that you're doing that is detrimental to where you want the child to be? So you should stop doing. And what are some of the things that you're already doing that you should either amp up or continue doing? That's to continue. So
Mhm.
it's the start, stop, continue. It's real simple. Take a daily stock. It's like, okay, how did I do? Oh, at the end of the week, how did I do? You know, where did I fall off? And the key thing here is not to be judgmental, not to beat yourself up, you know,
Right.
more so on being discerning, blameless discernment. It's like, okay, I didn't do what I said I was going to do. Okay, fine. Don't beat yourself up. what can I do to get corrected, so I can get back on the path to what I need to do, which is best for my child. So the blameless discernment is important. And yeah, just keep doing it over and over again until it becomes habit.
So that actually kind of leads into another thing that I read in your book that seemed rather important to you, and that was what's going on with our school systems right now. Kristina was a second grade teacher, actually K through 5 for 27 years, specifically mostly liking the early grades. And one of the reasons that she actually got out of the education is they stopped being allowed to teach the children how to learn, how to want to learn. And instead they were being forced to teach facts. And so even like in the last couple of years, it's like, oh, on this day, every second grader needs to be reading this page in this book. And then on Friday, you need to be doing this test and this. So the individuality and the learning was taken out of it. And instead they were like pushing facts to a test. And so that learning, that ability to grow on themselves, within themselves, was taken away. And like right now in Oregon, I think it's like 80% of our children are graduating with less than a 6th grade reading level, and actually less than 50% of the children in school are actually graduating right now. So our education system is actually, it's almost designed to like stop teaching children. And so the role of parents to step in and supplement that is incredible at this point. So how does your book help parents understand that and move into that, being able to start taking more of their children from the facts to learning to love again?
I guess the biggest thing is getting involved, right? And understanding what's being taught, how's my child progressing, because it's not a one size fits all, right? And sometimes when you see the student to teacher population, it's also very different ratio. It's also very difficult to do the individual attention, right? So you have to supplement as a parent as well, right? And what you talked about really, really is something that's near and dear to me, because that's what I wrote my thesis on for my PhD, on the graduation rate. As students were progressing from middle school to high school, everything went down. And why is that? I actually went and interviewed teachers and things like that. And there were so many different constraints as well, and issues. Some of them were teacher motivation, right? Because regardless of what they do, they get paid, and they know when somebody's going to come and do the observation, and that's when they do the better job at teaching, right? Exactly. Otherwise, it's just like herding the cats, right? And also they're supposed to follow a Common Core or a certain curriculum, like what you said, and you can't deviate. But no, that's not, the rote memorization is not the way to teach people, right? Because that's not the true world. So you need to give them, problems which could have multiple solutions, or which could even give multiple problems out of that, because that's what the real world is. So how are you equipping them to operate in that, right? And I know for a while, the flip model was also very popular, where they actually tell you to go read this and then, answer the question. And then during the class, it's where we're going to discuss, okay, well, how did you think about solving this problem? And then you kind of having the right question. And I do the same thing, even with the executive, right? Because when you have an executive who is seasoned, before a direct report comes to them and asking for a question, like, how do I solve this? You probably have a gazillion different ideas how to do it. But instead of doing that, pause and then ask them the clarifying question. Why do you want to do that? Because you want to let them grow, right? You don't want them coming running to the teacher or the parent all the time. So you ask clarifying question. You always acknowledge, great job, great starting point. Now, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this risk or this assumption and things like that? And that shows them how to go through the thinking process to solve a problem. Right. Those are the things that need to be. And parents also need to get involved and find out, what did you learn in school? Most of the time it's like, oh, nothing. That's what the common response that you get. But ask the right question, right?
Correct.
You gotta
you don't want to grill the children, well, tell me everything, but you have that conversation, or you build that communication style where you can ask those probing questions and get more out of them.
Exactly. And I always share with what my experience was. Hey, this is what I did. And I tell them, so kind of plant the seeds, right?
Right.
Something like that happened to you too, and then you get the conversation going little by little. So different techniques, if you don't know what it is, YouTube it, Google it. There's so many different ways to communicating with your child. So don't take it as an excuse like, oh, my child never responds to me. It always says no, things like that. Don't do that.
Yeah, there's also the whole the changes in the way stuff is done. So she was a second grade teacher for a lot of years. I helped her grade a lot of papers. And then one year, I did math. I was great at math. And
instant calculator.
and then one day she brought home math and she's like, oh, grade these. And I'm like reading through this and I was like, I can't do second grade math anymore. So
Wow.
the stuff that they're trying to teach and have the kids do and look at, to me, it's not math. So there's a lot of parents who understand that 2 + 2 is 4, but now they're not teaching 2 + 2 is 4. They're teaching this weird graphing and putting things on the paper and coming up with lots of different ways. And so parents look at that kind of stuff and it's like, what do I do with this? And so there's also this disconnect now between the way they're trying to teach children and what the parents know. So again, how do we start to bridge that kind of a gap between the changes in what they're trying to teach and how we were taught and what we think?
Yeah. You brought up something else where I try to understand, this is not going to be like a bashing the teachers or parents, right? No, it's not. It's just trying to understand like what's in it for me. Why are you teaching in the first place, right? You chose this profession for a reason, right? And how can we make sure it is fulfilling for you, the child, and also the parent, right? So is that the role of the principal to find that out? Perhaps, or superintendent, perhaps, right? But I have a lot of admiration for doctors and teachers and first responders and all these folks, right? But again, you got to find out what their motivation is, and then try to tap into that and inspire them to be the best teacher they can be. And that's one of the things that I do as well as an executive coach. I work a lot on mental fitness to understand what is your inspiration, and there is a famous author, he just passed away 2 years ago, Viktor Frankl. And he has a famous quote saying, between stimulus and response, there is space. And in that space lies our power to respond, right? And in that response is our growth and freedom, right? Because we live in such a reactive world. Everything is reactive. We are so judgmental. So one of the things that I teach when I work with all my leaders and all my clients is, how can we do the pause? How can we extend the pause? So you're not operating 90% of the time in a reactive mode rather than the creative mode. Again, it goes back to fight or flight versus growth, right? They're all interconnected, right? But again, we are reactive because that's part of the subconscious. We parked it already because that's what we were taught. Similar to driving a car from point A to point B. We don't think about it. We're thinking of a billion other things, right? That's part of the subconscious. And that's how we operate 95% of the time. So how can we take time and pause, whether it is through mindfulness or whatever you want to call it, so that you can extend the pace and then tap into your creativity and respond in a calm, clear-headed manner where you have something that is a win-win-win for everybody and we all are happy.
Turn those instant reactions and give it a pause and turn the reaction into a response. And then people can become responsible.
That's it. Exactly. And every one of us have something called saboteurs, right? We one of the biggest one is judge, right? We judge ourselves, we judge others, we judge the circumstances, right? And those judges, right, are basically lies to you, saying that we're good for you. That's what make you what you are. And things like, no, to me, the judge or any kind of saboteurs in your life are considered like early warning indicators, like touching your hand on your stove, like, that's hot, I better not do that. But guess what a lot of people do? You leave their hand there for the extended period. So that's what happened. So again, the pause is all about, okay, I know, it's coming. So how can I pause so I can get into more of a sage mode and then respond appropriately?
I love that. That is something I think that a lot of parents can really take away, is like, find that pause before you react. And then I love turn it into a response. So you're responsible. You understand what you're doing and why you're reacting that way or saying what you're saying.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And again, another thing that I taken into my corporate world as well, being
Yeah.
responsible versus accountable. There's a difference between those two.
Right.
Yeah, so many interlinks between early childhood development and what you are as a leader and just an employee.
I love this. Oh, it has been so wonderful talking with you and talking about how to help our parents be better parents, get those brains connected, hardwire to rewire. It's been a great time talking with you.
Thank you so much. Like, I enjoyed this, and like I said, I have additional resources on my website. Your audience can go check them out. I'm more than happy to talk to them. I also do a lot of speaking and workshops as well. So I'll be more than happy to help anyone spread the word. Use this. We need it. We
Yeah.
have what, 141 million children born every year globally.
Let's not bring them up in trauma. Let's bring them up with help and support so we don't have to keep re-healing. Let's get them there without all of this. That would be really wonderful.
Exactly.
So we will have all of your links and information in your bio, but so they can hear it from you. How can our families get a hold of you if they would like to get a hold of you? Where can they get a hold of you? What resources do you have for them?
Probably the best resource will be my website. It's www.drravirajaratnam.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter, and I don't really do much Facebook, but yeah, website would be the best resources. I have a lot of links to it as well in terms from the Center of Disease Control with early childhood development skills and things like that as well. So,
Excellent. Yeah. And then there was a free gift that you were going to put in there with us as well. It's like a way to get a hold of your book and then talk with you a little bit.
yes.
Like that. I'm sorry, I forgot. But
No worries. Yeah, if you get my book and you put in a review, an Amazon review, because we all run through algorithms, right?
Right, exactly.
I will give you a complimentary, 30-minute coaching. So I'll send you the link as well for that. So you can click on that and schedule time with me. Whether you want to talk about parenting or whether you want to talk about your own self-development, things like that. Because I do a lot of that as well, personal development and professional development, especially in the corporate world, coming in as a whole person, because what goes on at home can also carry over to the workplace.
Yeah, exactly. Wonderful. Do you have any other speaking engagements or anything coming up that you would like to tell our families about? Or are you
Not
just
here.
getting
There's
the word
one.
out?
There's one that I'm working on right now in Singapore. So nothing local yet. Yeah.
Got it. Perfect. Well, we will make sure that all of your information is down in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us and helping our parents understand a little bit more about their child development, the brain, and how to hopefully make things better.
And actually, before we wrap up,
Oh,
is
yeah.
there something that we didn't cover that you like, oh man, I wish we had talked about this today. I really want their folks to know about this. Is there something, is there a final takeaway that you would like to leave our families with?
As a parent, especially as a mom, you're a gift and a blessing to your child. So step up and be that gift and blessing, because who I am today is thanks to my mom, who was a great role model, thanks to my eldest sister, who is a great role model, and then even my current role models, which is my wife and my youngest daughter. She's 22. I still learn a lot from her, right? Being vulnerable and saying that I don't know everything, because I like to know your perspective. So again, that's what I would like to say.
Awesome.
That is a
Thank
beautiful
you.
message to end with. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And make sure you follow our show, give us some reviews, and check out all the information in our show notes. Bye for now.